Yeah, like to me, I think the run, like the back half of the run is where the workout's going to start to take shape and you're
Mm.
going to start to see maybe who's in contention or not. But I do think you'll see some people disrespect the sled, ski, sled.
Mm.
So those three movements being back to back,
Yeah, yeah.
I think you're going to see some people implode on the last 500 meters of skiing and then get to that last hand over hand, do halfway, and just almost get to lactic threshold, and then someone else will pass them at the end.
And that's interesting because then that brings into conversation the sled technique and what the standard is for pulling it. I mean, me and you talked a little bit about yesterday that hip drive technique where you have a double grip and your arms are extended and you pull the rope to your hips while you extend your hips and then reach and get more slack. And for me, I can pull like that all day and it's almost entirely metabolic rather than becoming muscular fatigue at any point. So
Well, and
it's
this is like, in some of these workouts, we'll see that it seems like details were omitted. In this case, a specific detail was included. It says hand over hand. And if it says hand over hand and it's not hand over hand, why would you write it that way? If it is hand over hand, how are you planning to mandate or enforce that? What happens if I start doing that hip thruster? What's the judge's directive and how to address that with me?
I wouldn't even know how to begin to standardize that. I mean, JR, you did it at Crash.
Yeah, I think the people who have reached out to me to ask me what we use for the standard, I've told them that we made the athletes keep their feet on a red line. So they were not allowed to walk backwards and use their counterweight to pull the weight at any point. Other than that, as long as their feet stayed on the line, they could use any technique with their hands that they wanted. What we did tell them was if their feet ever came off of the line, they would have to go down and push the sled back to the last 10-foot section they completed and then continue their pull.
I like that. If you are able to put some 10-foot markers or 8-foot markers or whatever on the floor, and if you deviate from the intended standard, which reads as hand over hand, that's a penalty. You got to go back out on the floor, push it back to the last one you successfully completed it, and then pull. That's exactly what I'm talking about. If that's something that's been thought through and there's an easy to understand and enforce penalty for someone who deviates from the expectation, I love it.
And what do you think, JR, about the meters for the Echo Bike versus a calorie? I mean, I know they couldn't make it look pretty in that format, but could they put it somewhere else?
To me, just whenever you're doing specifically that machine for distance and not for calories, the amount of time that you're going to lose or gain from 5 RPMs less is almost negligent.
Negligible, yeah.
And I don't think that should ever be the issue. I told someone the other day I would be okay if we never did anything for distance again on a machine and it was only calories.
Aside from running, where they just ran not on a machine.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we can get to this later, talking about the first and last event having Echo Bike. And while sometimes there isn't another substitution, I think there's a lot of utility with biking in general.
Yeah.
First event last year, right back, was bike to work. I was kind of surprised seeing the last workout that the Echo Bike wasn't just bike erg, and it wasn't just bike erg, runner, ski erg.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's probably a handful of people. There's a handful of competitors that this is an event they're going to win. And whether they think there's another test in the weekend that they're not looking so much forward to, there are going to be a handful that don't care about just getting off the bike at the same time as everyone else. They're going to push the pace. They're going to dictate pace from the beginning. And I think they will be a little bit more aggressive.
JR, if you were looking at this, what would you allocate for each of these?
If I just did 4.84 on the machines and then 3 minutes for the sled, that's 19, right?
3 minutes, a minute for each sled.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I hope that it's longer. I hope it's more like each sled takes 2 minutes or each sled takes 3 minutes. But doing a lot of hand over hand at different weights, seeing a lot of competitors do it too. I mean, there's some people that can do 90 feet in, less than 30 seconds. I don't think there's going to be anyone in this field that can really manhandle it like that, but who knows?
Yeah, but I mean, when you've seen that, that's been on turf, yeah?
Or Brent on the last sled, hand over hand sled at the games, which was what, 5 blues, maybe 6 blues.
And what surface was that?
Yeah, and that was a tennis court. So yeah, I think we can assume this is going to be this is going to have the most friction of any pull that we've seen in a competition.